Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve and this is a 5-minute review of Mad Max 2 from 1981. The film is sometimes known as The Road Warrior, and I watched it many years ago and I've gone back and watched it again as a kind of retrospective upon the film to see if it was as good as I remembered. The film stars Mel Gibson, Bruce Spence, Michael Preston, Vernon Wells, who people will know most recently from the Mad Max Fury Road films, Virginia Hay, who's also in Farscape, and Emil Minty, who plays the feral kid, an important role in the film, which you don't realise until the very end. There's going to be some spoilers in this review, so if you haven't seen it, come back afterwards. The film is directed by George Miller, who was responsible for directing the first 3 Mad Max films, and then, as I said, more recently, directed Mad Max Fury Road. The film takes place in a post-apocalyptic wasteland of Australia. It's set after the first film, where previously Max was a police officer and everything goes wrong when a group of bikers are responsible for murdering his family and he goes after them seeking justice. This is a few years on from that, and he's a much more grizzled character. There's just him and his dog in this souped up car that is incredibly fast. There's still people chasing him on the road all of the time. There are maniacs, there are gangs with guns, and they're all desperate for the fuel, the gasoline. This is what they need more than anything to fuel their engines, to allow them to stay mobile, and to keep terrorizing people. The film focuses on one particular area where a group of people have been able to create a fortified base for themselves built around a well where they're able to draw up gasoline. So they have power in the region, but of course a roaming gang wants it. They attack the base, they're constantly trying to get in, they're killing people, and they're losing a war through attrition, and they can't hold out. Max encounters this group. I won't go into details too much about how it happens, but he ends up inside the base, and he works with them to find a plan to defeat the roving gang, or at least escape them. So when I think about Mad Max, and I think about all of the films, this is the film that I think about the most. It's the one that has stayed with me for nearly 40 years now, even though I saw it perhaps when I was 8 or 10 years old, so 30 years for me, but it's nearly been out for 40 years. At that time, Mel Gibson was fairly unknown apart from the previous Mad Max film. He was very fresh-faced, he was very lean, and he was such a good actor. And I think he still is, despite some of the problems that we've seen in more recent years from him. Back then, you can see what he would become. He was incredibly raw, he was incredibly powerful, and that comes through in the role of Max. You believe that he's this man with nothing to lose. He's incredibly dangerous, he's incredibly forthright. They're all dithering, the people in the camp, they don't know what to do, and he says, if you want some help, you want to get out of this, you come and talk to me. So he makes a deal with them. Even though this is the middle film and is what essentially a trilogy, it's by no means a traditional trilogy. That first film was set up not in a way that they would expect or had planned to do sequels. It was never like that back then. It was something that they experimented with and tried. George Miller did as a very young director, and it worked brilliantly. The fact that they were able to then carry on was great. The second film, I think, is best of the trilogy. The third one, it's fun, it's silly, it's got some really over-the-top moments. Of course, Tina Turner's famously in it. The first one was very much the starter, trying to find a way. This feels more polished. This feels real. This feels lived in. The world, the characters, you believe that there are people struggling to survive in this hard landscape, and you care about them. They're actually people that you want to know and you want to see do well. The villains are, yes, a bit of a caricature, but the people who are fighting against them are not quite as maniacal or as cookie cutter, and that makes them interesting and you want to root for them. And of course, in the midst of this is Max, the wild card, the person who can help them, but he wants something in return, because in this wasteland, it's all about making a deal. And that's something that comes up again in Thunderdome, the next film. The action in this film is incredible. It's fast-paced, it's visceral, and you feel that you're really there with them, fighting on the tanker or when they're on the roads and the cars are burning down at ridiculous speeds. It's really exciting. And unlike some modern action films, the action just serves a purpose. It isn't just there just so it looks really cool. There's something to it. It's exciting, but there's also character development, and that's what I think is missing from a lot of action films. They just don't understand that there has to be that balance. It can't all be style over substance, and this is something I'm saying a lot more often. As I've become older, there are things that I want in a film that I don't enjoy as much as I did perhaps when I was younger, where I didn't pay attention to what was going on beyond the surface. Now, even in an action film, I want more. And for all of the updated special effects and amazing actors and incredible landscapes in the new one, Mad Max Fury Road, I think it failed for me. It just didn't grip me in the same way. It had completely spun about face, and it became all about how cool it looked, and not about the story, which was not a patch on these earlier films. The script in this is incredibly lean, much like the landscape. It's bare and barren, and it leaves a lot of space, a lot of breathing room for the actors, and a lot of time for them to put themselves into the character. They don't spell everything out. There's no nods and winks to the camera. It's very much sparse, like the rugged landscape that it was shot in. This film also has one of the sort of best voiceovers at the end of the film. In modern films, they've done this more recently, where they have this need to kind of have a postscript and say the name of the film, which is really annoying, and it just bothers me. Back when this film came out in 1981, they did something a little different, and it has one of the best closing speeches of a film that I've seen, to the fact that where I can nearly repeat it word for word 30 years on from when I saw it. It's haunting. It adds something to the film that you didn't know before, which makes you go back and look at the film in a whole new light. And it's really, really special. The landscape in this film and the images that it creates are amazing. The sets are obviously quite lean because it was shot out in the wilds of the bush, so it's really raw. The actors are fantastic. The action in the third act is fantastic. It's really exciting, terrifying, and you care about the characters and you're worried about their fate. Even when I've seen the film so many times, there's still that rising tension within me as I worry about them and what's going to happen next. Some parts of the film have aged and dated a bit, but that doesn't really bother me, because so many years on, I can still watch it and enjoy it and talk about it with such passion, because it's such a great film, and it's definitely worth going back. If you've only seen the modern Max Fury Road film, I'd go back and watch the original trilogy from the start, and you learn about the roots of where it all came from and how it's just the beginning of George Miller and what he did 40 years ago to where he is now as a director. So for all of those reasons, I'm actually going to give Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, 5 out of 5 and say it's one of my favourite action films of all time. Even though it's a classic, it's still worth your time. It's definitely a fantastic watch. So, have you seen Mad Max 2? If so, get in touch and let us know. You can contact us in all of the usual ways. We're on email, we're on Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, which really helps us out. We're on Ko-fi if you want to support us there. We have new episodes coming out every week. And thanks for listening.